Welcome to Intentionally FinTech, the show where we dive deep behind the purpose of your favorite, emerging, and incumbent FinTech brands. I'm your host for today, Michael Phillips, the CEO and founder of a purpose-driven branding agency called Beholst. After 7 years in the creative industry and after an unfortunate wake-up call in late January, I've made it my mission to help founders like my guests here on the podcast to do what inspires them most. On this show, we're going to dive deep behind the mission and purpose of your favorite fintech brands, the values that drive their day-to-day work, and just how exactly clarity of purpose helps them compete in an otherwise cluttered environment. So let us dive in. My guest for today is Mathias Kobberup. Did I say that right? I'm very sorry.
Hi, Michael. Nice to be here.
Hey, nice to be with you here. So tell us a little bit, Mathias, what do you do at your company? Introduce yourself a little bit, because I wouldn't do you enough justice if I were to do that.
I think you would, but thanks. Well, I'm Mathias. We started a company called Uniconomic fairly recently, actually. But I've had a KYC and AML tech company before called Redefines that we sold to Visma a few years ago now. It wasn't the biggest company. We were 75 people when I left, and I was handling both our product but also tech at the end, as well as our finances. I'm an economist by education, so not a developer or a marketing or brand expert for that matter. But we started Uniconomic because I managed our finances and I needed 6-7 different tools to run our financial operations. Like, you need a bookkeeping system. Then you find out that regular bookkeeping systems don't do something as simple as scan an incoming invoice. They don't manage subscriptions or aren't geared towards it. You can't run payroll, so you need that as well. You can't do budgets, you can't do cash flow forecast, and then you end up with 6 tools and you actually don't have an overview. Then you need a dashboard tool on top of all of this, and still somehow you end up in spreadsheets or Excel and do all of this manually, because when you report something as simple as your MRR or some financial metrics, one of the board members will ask, "Are you sure that's right?" And then you get fuzzled, So you run back to your spreadsheet and figure out, shit, the tools weren't in sync, and you have to start all over again. So I was lucky enough to have a partner in crime, Nikolai, that was working in Cadito with me for a lot of years. Which we at least try to build up a new ERP system from the ground up, where you have bookkeeping, subscription management, warehouse management, payroll, all of this in a new tech stack. We can also see our competition, which is very, very established. The biggest one has 400 FTEs, behemoth, but really don't run fast. They are very comfortable in the current levels, and I don't believe that is for the best for their users or customers, especially when you have a strategy of increasing prices regularly without adding additional value. So we want to do something about that. And well, most of all, we want to build the tool I would wish that I've had when we were starting off.
That is a very, very good determination. And it's something we see on this podcast quite often. It's founders who start from either their own frustration with existing tools or frustrations with the system. We've had people who wanted to revolutionize the system also. And that's a good mission to have. Hard one, by the way, but I'm happy that you guys can achieve that. All right. But, we spoke about the product. We spoke about the company. I would like to shift the spotlight onto you, if you want, and to ask you, what made you want to build this? Was it the frustration you talked about, or was there a feeling you wanted to serve a higher purpose?
Well, honestly, 3 feelings, I think. One of them is obviously the frustration of needing this myself. The second is that we sold my previous company to Visma. They are a big player in the ERP market, and the acquisition went well, but I don't like big companies. And I think giving something back and really modernizing these behemoths, this David versus Goliath, it makes me feel quite comfortable taking up that torch again. And I think the third is this entire industry where everybody is using buzzwords like AI and new cutting edge tools. It's an acronym of putting in a LLM wrapper on the side of something that was built 25 years ago. We've incorporated AI orchestration layers at a database and a foundational layer. There is a structural, very significant difference to this, which you don't see it on a website, but you do it when you actually use it.
Yeah.
So I think I really want to challenge the established, and I could round up the first 100 people that would say I'm an anarchist, but I do think AI and finance, especially by de facto, is boxes and pluses and minuses. You couldn't find a better use case for it. So I think someone should have done this. Was it enough feeling for you, Michael?
That was perfect, actually. You hit the cherry on top.
Great. Now I get a bonus.
Perfect. All right. Would you say that this mission that you're talking about of revolutionizing the status quo was stronger than you finding a gap in the market? Because if we have listeners who are in university and they're taking right now their very first entrepreneurship course, like I did back in the day, they would tell you, find a gap in the market, find a solution to address it, you're golden. That's what they say, at least. I'm not sure if it's true. Well, I know it's not true, but
I've had the same courses, and we've all been told this the last 10 years or so, even before being an entrepreneur was a romantic thing, because people still forget that this is a shit ton of work, and it constrains everything. You need to have a good wife like me, where you manage expectations. But I think one of the upsides of going after a such established market is that we have no intentions of explaining anybody what we do. Everything has been said on the matter. If you go into a blue ocean, 90% of your time will be spent on framing the market, the opportunity, and as your previous episodes have stated, you become very logical. Like with KYC, we needed to establish, why is this a thing? Well, because you get fined if you don't. And we can automate it for you so you can save time. But it's all uphill battle. But now our biggest, what would you call it, task is owning the problem. Everybody else has driven up the market and framed the market. We just need to prove how everybody else is doing it wrong, or too expensive, or too, in Danish you would say heavy in the ass, but they're too slow to move. So red oceans are also a very good thing if you come in with something significantly different. And we compile 5 tools, operate cheaper, and but I would like that if we can code the way we do now, if we get a feature request today, I would like to have it on a average basis live in production within 3 weeks. I don't see why not. And we are very comfortable battling 6 developers with, I don't know, Visma, one of their biggest companies, has 200 developers, but they're still fixing bugs from 2006, and they will do the same next year. That is what happens when you become these old organized companies. And I don't think you will see those companies in 10 years from now.
This is where we agree. I also have the same thought. This is also because I've been in 3 boards, so I can tell you how different cultures work. I've been in boards where everything was very organized and the thing was too rigid, or there's a problem we discussed last week also, or last month even, and we took the measures, but nothing was actually applied in practice because I don't know what. But I've also been in boards where everything's more dynamic and there's no such thing as a hierarchical organization, and it's more like at the same level, right? And it just so happens that those were the companies where innovation and this whole idea of authenticity was very well nurtured.
Yeah, I agree.
Let me ask you this. Was your mission something that you built up over time, or was something that you've always felt?
I've been called difficult by various administrations and HR departments, probably for that reason. I think looking at it structurally, everything, especially in development, Scrum, Agile, Safe, all of this, what you are trying to replicate is a commercial person and a developer. You're always trying to get back to that close knit where you don't have a hierarchy. Everybody's accountable for something and you move fast and break things. Historically, it either goes very bad or very good. So it's both ends of the spectrum. which essentially proves the point of why that methodology works so well. Because I've also been in investments and boards where, you fall asleep and you read the same report of 30 pages of something that really doesn't matter, essentially. And you build up these massive organizations of people doing very good work, but fundamentally they are protecting themselves and that they also have a job tomorrow. So they become gatekeepers of their own little box of, dude, this is my responsibility. Don't touch it. Even if you have a very good idea and so on, I will steal that and bring it up myself to my boss so I can get a raise next year. You get all of these interpersonal dynamics that is not fruitful for what really matters. Every business must make money. That is a premise. But a business can choose to allocate that profit back to your employees or your customers for that matter, or a split in between. Of course, something needs to go back to shareholders. I'm a big advocate for shareholder supremacy, maybe not in the way we did it in the 80s and 70s, and I don't want to give you a economical history lesson, but I do think organizations will look rapidly different in very short years, not only in FTE count, but purpose-driven organizations with a big ethos of why are we doing this and who do we want on the team? Not these so-called professional people, but let's take the misfits and put them in a room to do something they truly care about.
Right. I've taken courses on corporate finance also back in the day. And a huge part of that was corporate governance, right? How do you handle the board? People don't understand that those methodologies worked maybe 30, 40 years ago. But right now, we are engaging in a new era where purpose is actually what drives people. And I agree the shareholder is important, but for the shareholder to be good, the customer needs to be good. And in order for the customer to be good, the employee needs to be good. So the order would be employee, customer, and then shareholder.
I couldn't agree more. Yes.
So yes, there is a new trend going on in business. I'm excited to see how that goes. And I'm excited that you and I are on this podcast taking the next step in this shall I say revolution? Am I too bold when I say that? I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm not that tall, but I can find a chair to stand up on, so we can lead the revolution. That's fine by me.
Cool. Perfect. All right, then. Well, I would like to introduce the framework which I always introduce. Let me know, are you familiar with the golden circle? So I know not to do the explanation too long.
Give me the short run-up, please.
Okay, I will give the short run-up also for our guests because this is an episodic podcast. Everything is self-contained. All right, so people, there's no surprise by not what you do, but why you do it. A good example of this is this podcast. A lot of my guests came because they were intrigued by my why, my story. Another thing is also other companies. Apple is another good example. I tend to buy Apple products, and I do have Apple products around me. The only thing which is not Apple is the microphone. And I do this because I now understand why. Because I believe that I think differently. But if you asked me 5-7 years ago, when I first worked in the creative industry and I joined the corporate world, so to say, I wouldn't be able to give you this answer. I would just rationalize it. But in truth is we buy why we do stuff. And in that sense, this is the golden circle. And it's no coincidence I've chosen my accent color to be coloring the Y over here. It's the most important component. We start from the why. Why do we do what we do? How are we different? How do we do what we do? And finally, with what? So to put this into perspective, with my company, we exist to help founders find their purpose such that together we can change the way people perceive businesses and engage in transactions. Because at the end of the day, everything is connected to purpose. How? Well, through my first-hand experience of finding my own purpose after I was tragically connected to machines in January. And also through the fact that I've created a new methodology of branding based on what Simon Sinek has pioneered to help founders like you and others to express this through branding. And finally, what I just happen to do branding. So this is what I do at my agency. And why and how. This is my golden circle, right? And I would like to do a little exercise, try to find your why statement. It's not going to be 100% accurate because we only have so much time. But would you be down to see what I got from you? Let me know if it strikes a chord from your stories.
Please, Michael. I can't wait.
I can see the excitement. Right, so Uniconomic exists to challenge the status quo and the I don't want to say doctrine. No, just even to challenge the status quo of how fintech operates, so that together we can push for faster innovation. That's what I got.
Sure, I think that's the branding perspective on it. The pragmatic would say that the others are dumb and not doing it right.
Yeah, but if we do say that, you're going to lose your ability to practice.
Yeah, maybe.
We had Stefan Krumbeck here, and he said it very nicely. You know, Michael, there's stuff we want to say, but we can't do because we risk losing our license. I said, I agree with you 100%, Stefan. I also want to say stuff, and I do say it on this podcast, and I end up cutting it at the end, the editing. But, okay, this was the chapter of purpose and the branding. Let's join the fintech side of the conversation, shall we? All right. So, you know, fintech is famous for the regulation. This is something which has been in here for a long time. And one of the biggest challenges my clients and my guests here have found themselves in is to navigate this environment of regulation while staying true to their why and their purpose. How did you find that with Uniconomic? What are your tips and tricks?
Well, I think in every aspect, when you start a company, you have to settle on the fact with yourself that you have to be extremely stubborn, also pretty relentless in pursuing something. So this is just another task that if you need a license to operate, if you need to abide by certain rules, you need to know them better than the oracles in the law offices, and especially better than your clients. Obviously, they're buying a service from you, so you need to have it under your skin. But it is a matter of reading a lot, asking a lot of stupid questions, and being, I wouldn't call it brave, but being okay with the fact that obtaining knowledge is usually done through either reading a lot or asking stupid questions. And the fastest way is to ask the stupid questions to a bunch of people.
Definitely, I agree with you. I believe that there's no such thing as a stupid question. There is some people who phrase questions better, some people who phrase questions less good. But any question is good because at the end you get an answer. And if you didn't have that answer, you gain knowledge, which can turn into wisdom in the long run. So for me, there's no such thing as a bad question. Even with the people I mentor, and I said, the only thing you need to do is be coachable and ask me questions. Even if you don't understand why the A4 paper is white or why do we say this, just ask me, because then you will get knowledge, which will turn into wisdom, which will help you in the long run with the brand equity. But thank you for the advice. The entrepreneurs watching this are certainly going to be thanking you. But talking about advice, you don't think so? Don't worry about it. Okay, let's move on because we're in the section where we ask you about your fintech. Do you think investors can tell, because I assume you have been in chats with investors, in your experience at least, when a fintech or a company, but especially fintechs because we're at Intentionally FinTech here, stands for something? Or when they're just checking boxes because, you know, you just come with a pitch, here's the assumptions, here are the pro forma predictions for 5 years, they look sensible, okay, fine, do we invest when that looks okay? Or do you think they actually take a look at the purpose behind?
Well, to put some context on it, we both in Credito, we tried to get investors, and obviously my PowerPoint skills weren't good enough because we were bootstrapped before it was romantic, which essentially means we couldn't find an investor who was willing to take the risk. Of course, on the backside of an exit, that's not the worst position to be in. So we don't have it either in Uniconomic. But by design, we are 6 people. Everybody has equity. Everybody is incentivized on the same premise, which I like very much. No one is working to raise next month's salary. If they do it out of need. But we work towards the same goal, which is extremely, I'm not really sure about the word, but there is something to being a tight group of people having the same incentives, same goal, same why. And to your question, yes, both when I invest and when we've pitched and I've listened to other investors, you develop a strong sense of a bullshit detector. So yeah, I do think you can really sniff out the good and the bad. And also people who truly burns for what they're doing. I don't think revolutionizing ERP is so sexy that anybody would invest in it. But what I do think most people understand is you look at Oracle, SAP, some Visma companies, even though they're doing very well, are they lazy? Have they dropped the torch within the the past 20 years? The answer is a really big yes. Yes, they have lost it, and they've lost their motivation and ability to innovate between HR departments, any parties, and branding exercises, all of this that doesn't bring value to any employees and certainly not to the customers. And I know I'm going a bit off topic here, but the biggest, I don't know, advice, gift I've ever gotten was being extremely poor. Like, honestly, that is the single. Being poor gives you perspective and it gives you the ability to execute on a whole new scale. If you do something today, you need the outcome to come at the latest by tomorrow. That shifts from developing fancy PowerPoints and sending out emails and all of this. You need to do something that will have an impact today or at the latest tomorrow. And everything you do around that. So you don't wait and develop it 99.99% done and to perfection. You ship it because it needs to work or break so you can move on to the next thing. And you only have that perspective, at least in my view, and I'm not necessarily right on this, but you only have it when you are extremely poor and have your back up against the wall. I think that is where true creativity sparks.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know if you know Simon Squibb or not, but
No.
have you heard of him? Okay, he's an amazing guy. Let me see if I have his book here. I don't think so. But it's What's Your Dream? And he talks about what you just said. He was dirt poor and he was sleeping on the street. And that's when he realized that he needs the sale call to work tomorrow. So he will do whatever he can to get and close the client.
Yep.
So I agree with you 100%. And coming back to the investor talk and the purpose, he also has a story about that, where it's important that you do something which is in tune with your purpose, because otherwise your business will not work. He invested in a restaurant. A chef had all the track record. This is the equivalent of us having the proper assumptions and the good-looking pro forma statements, right? He had the tracker. He went to the best cooking school in France, mind you. He went, I think he also had a couple Michelin stars, worked in Michelin star restaurants. So he had the track record. If you and I were looking at it, we said, okay, this guy's going to make a good restaurant. We're going to go there, make $1 billion. Here's the money. That's what he did also. But he found out that his why had nothing to do with cooking. He was actually very into birds. And his dream was actually to photograph birds and to do art, to inspire people through visual art, which you could do through cooking, but he had this affinity for photographing birds. He wanted to be an ornithologist. So when he opened the restaurant and Simon went there to eat, the chef was never there because he was out there taking photos of birds. And guess what happened with the restaurant?
Went out of business.
Obviously.
Or it had a lot of pictures of birds in it.
Yeah, it's actually the former which happened. And Simon lost his investment, actually. He didn't even make a buck over his investment. And he highlights in his book the idea of importance when you do something and hire. That's also Simon Sinek who says this, to align with purpose. But let me rewind you back to your early days, which is not too long ago. Yeah. Dare I say, are you still in your early days?
Depends. If you ask me, I would say yes. But according to my wife, when I turned, I'm 33. Yes. When I turned 30, I got a book that would, I think the title is something, Now You're Middle-Aged or something. My oldest and her gave that to me, and that was a very nice gift.
So, I can imagine.
Yeah. It's always nice to be appreciated.
Of course. So when resources were tight with, let's just say, Uniconomic, because that's the company you're currently working on, how did your purpose help you navigate these decisions that you had to make? How do we allocate the resources? Did it help you stay focused? Was there a tough call you had to make maybe because it aligned better with your why than the obvious answer? How did that happen?
I can definitely see a difference in starting Uniconomic as opposed to trying with Credito back in the day. You sort of have a roadmap in your head of at least what to avoid and what makes sense to drive everything from reputation and so on. So starting Uniconomic, I knew we had to have some partners in accounting, which we already have. We have close to 40 accounting companies already partnered up with us and ready for when we launch and getting our license. And we have the first, 50 beta customers already signed up. So we are in a pretty good state. But I also knew that Nicolai and I couldn't develop it on our own. So we found some very, very good people, and we tried to remedy every mistake Nico and I made at Credito, like, well, cutting the fat, we call it, because we don't have any product owners or designers. We found two CFOs, both educated as accountants, if I'm not mistaken, one from SaaS industry and one from the industrial, gave them shares, equally foot on the rest of us, and they sit next to us to tell us when are the ERP system in a state where they would use it. So we've hired customers directly into the organization. Usually you would have this fat layer of oracles in product departments, and I was one myself. So I was, I could be spared, and I probably still can. But I would go out to customers, listen to their stories, and somehow I was the only one in this setting where I could transform the user needs into tickets or tasks for a development department, which is kind of ridiculous because you should send out a developer that could speak to the customer, listen to the problems, so they had the context of what works, what doesn't, how does it function, instead of relying on third-party information. So I think some of these mistakes, I'm very happy that we know today, so we don't need 20 people to function. We just need the six of us, and that's all we need for now, at least.
Okay, definitely.
Does it answer your question to some extent?
Yes, to some extent. Well, I was more interested when you were taking decisions. For example, let me give you an example from my perspective. I'll talk in vague terms, so I don't disclose anything, but I got a collaboration for, I don't know, just 5K, right, on the agency. I look at the customer, and I look at what the project is. The project was fine. Like, it was something that what we do is basically purpose-driven branding. So it was a match on the what, but something concerning the customer and their why, their reason for being in business was giving me the ick. I was saying that I had the gut feeling that I shouldn't work with this person. And this translates to my why is not in tune with yours, like Simon Sinek puts it in his work. And I refused the project. People told me, and also like one of my collaborators, friends actually right now, he's not working with us anymore, asked me, are you crazy? You just rejected money. I didn't reject money. Money is just a consequence of what I do. I rejected making a bad decision for my business because it wasn't in tune with my why. So what I was interested, did you have moments like this with a Uniconomic or any other of your startups?
Yeah. We've had a few people through both in interview phases and where we actually took a trial period on in these past month. We are very picky about who to take on, both from a cultural fit purpose, but when you've hired and fired enough people, you kind of know who you're in tune with, and you can see the problems not in the next chess move, but the 10 next chess moves, which is I hope it's a strength, but I could also be a dickhead that just said no to the wrong person, obviously. But for me, like you said, why is one thing, but the motivation and I don't know, there's something about fire in the eyes, which is why and it sounds so stupid, but I love desperate and poor people because they get it. They really understand the value in executing. When you get an idea, go do it. Run, not walk. You need to do it right now, immediately. Not this, I will get to it next week. I hate that speech. Or you can put it in my to-do list. No, I won't. You need to do this now if we agree that this is the problem and it's important. If it's not
I
important, then
agree.
tell me.
I agree with you 100% here. This is also how I like to run things.
Yeah, so I think there is something, you get to know certain person types, and in some organizations something works. In ours, I think this works. I hope it works, otherwise I don't fit in, which is obviously also that can also be a consequence. But I think there is something to having seen the consequences and extrapolated. Not just I don't like this person, but the problems that arises when you put in some person that don't fit in with the team or the culture, something like this. Then you've seen what can unfold, and you really try to avoid it. Firing
I
people is
agree.
extremely hard for everybody involved, of course, but it also takes a toll on the team, the culture, the mood, the productivity. By all costs, avoid it. but start by hiring the right persons.
Right.
This,
I agree.
fire in the eyes is very hard metric to define, but it's a gut feeling, maybe.
Yeah, and that's actually connected to your why. Because when the gut feeling is just, okay, let me introduce this concept of the old brain and the new brain. The old brain is where our emotions and instinct stays. It's the oldest part of the cognitive function. It evolved millions of years ago when the reptiles was crawling on the ground, dinosaurs, right? It's the instinct of survival and feeling. But language is not in this part of the brain, right? It's in the neocortex, the new brain. This is where the ration and where language and critical thinking lay. This is the newest part of the brain, evolved 10,000 years ago, the evolution of us. So, when we look at it from this perspective, the gut feeling comes from the old brain, but we can't put it in words because old brain doesn't know how to speak, right? So then we feel it and we can't put it in words. We can't say it's because of this. We start rationalizing it like I was doing with Apple back in the day. Oh, I like the designs. That's why I got a thing. Now, because I've educated myself in this, I can say it's because I have the same belief system as Apple does and we believe the same thing. So if you were to ask me, and what I tell my clients is find your why and hire people with the same why as you do, because they will feel inspired when they come to work and they're not waiting for the paycheck. For them, the paycheck is just something that allows them to eat, but they work for you. They actually don't work for you. They work with you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. Completely.
Wonderful. This is my favorite question in the question deck, by the way. Imagine that this AirPods case, talking about Apple, like I told you everything, but this microphone is Apple, was a magic wand. And if I waved it like this, anything you would change about your business would just magically change. What would you change and why?
It wouldn't be a magic wand. It would be a time machine. Fast forward, I don't know, 3 months, where we have the license and it we're in a we're in a particular stage now where we have a lot of interest and beta users, partners lined up, but we don't have the license to operate, at least in Denmark yet. We do have a lot of interest from other countries around us as well, which is fantastic, but we want to start in Denmark. So currently it's Schrödinger's cat, the thought or the quantum physics experiment, where we
Yeah.
don't know if the cat is dead or not. So I want to open the trunk to figure out it because I still to this day struggle with either we really hit the spot, we really figured out this is a radical new way of doing bookkeeping and compiling all of these small niche tools, or we are bunkers and wasted all this time. I hope for the first, obviously, and I think, but I'm also raised as a pessimist. My dad's a farmer, you should never think highly of yourself, and you should stay in your lane. So I would fast forward to see if the cat is dead or alive. But to change our organization, not one thing. We have a and beyond team. Everybody works with the same incentives. Couldn't have hoped for anything else.
Wonderful. Wow. Okay, you're the very first who would change anything. So I don't know if it's worth me even trying to wave it. I always try to wave it, but I mean, if you're ready for the time machine, I can't help you with that. We're just gonna have to wait and see. But
I should have went on another podcast then.
Wonderful. Okay, let's talk about your legacy because that's something which I think you might have thought of at some point.
Well, I am gonna die someday. We have a 1-year-old boy and a pre-teenage daughter.
Oh,
Yeah, both ends of the spectrum. It's all nice, well, legacy. I hope the people that think I'm a pain in the ass will realize that I was right, all the time. I think they do deep down. I have to believe that. I'm not necessarily, I don't think I know better than anybody. I think twice, especially about my own actions, more than I would argue mostly. But I do debate a lot because I actually believe in what I say, so I fight for it. That is my default mode. If you won't back up what you say, why say it? So I fight for it. I hope my kids will grow up to be the exact same type because there is something very good about being stubborn and having this fighter gene, which is why I liked growing up with 2 brothers. We always fought a lot and it gives you this kind of, I don't know, fuck you attitude, but stamina when things get tough. And I think 90% of people, at least in my experience, they fold when things get tough. Not in an hour, like I need to get a blood sample and it hurts, so I can stomach this through. But okay, the next year you don't make any money. Everything is against you. Everybody thinks you're a moron because you're doing this and this and this. Not many people can stamina that. And I think that is where you show your true mental strength and actually, go the extra mile. So I hope passing that to my kids will be, I will die happy with that if they can find that in themselves.
Wonderfully put. I love when someone likes to give legacy to their offspring. I myself walk in the legacy of my granddad. He chiseled a lot of who I am when it comes to business and when it comes to relationships, personal and professional. So I owe a lot of that to him. So if that was his legacy, he succeeded. But all right, final curveball for today. What we like to do on this podcast is to review the websites of our guests or anything they want to give us at hand and to see if they're in tune with their purpose. Are you familiar with the celery test, by the way, Mathias?
No.
All right. Well, let me introduce it to you really quickly and also for the audience. It's something which Simon Sinek introduces in one of his books. And it comes to this. If I were a health guru, for an example, which would you think I'd offer you? Would I offer you some fast food, fried chicken maybe, or hamburgers, cheeseburgers, you name it? Or would I offer you a salad made out of celery? Which one do you think?
Well, I am more of a burger kind of guy, but I know the rational answer to it. Yes.
Celery, exactly.
Sure.
I mean, also, depending how many legumes you put on the burger, you can argue it's a meat salad. It's all about perspective. But this is exactly what we do. We look at the websites or the communication of our guests and to see whether the purpose, which we established earlier in the podcast, to challenge the status quo, is actually something which one could understand at the first reading of your website or copy text. Would you be down to do that in a couple of minutes, 3-4 minutes here on the podcast?
Well, you've put me on the air, so I don't have a choice, Michael. Well, yeah, let's do that, man.
All right, Mathias, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Wonderful. Can you also see when I highlight
mark
stuff?
something? Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so let's see. Uniconomic, finance as it should be. Forecasting done. I like this. Automate bookkeeping, payroll, all in one place, built to scale and last. I like this because you hint at your why and you hint at you're challenging something because something is not done right. So I like that. Replace the stack, one platform. Bring bookkeeping to focus a single platform, trust your numbers, cut manual work, move fast steam, build for speed, security, and scale. I like this because you're hinting at replacing the status quo and you're pushing the idea of bringing stuff faster when that's a good thing. Build for SaaS, and it runs your finance. This is your what, from what I understand. Okay. And you have the explore all capabilities. I'll click on this later. Let me scroll down. SaaS billing.
I hope the link works.
Don't worry about it. We'll check it out. I like this animation, by the way, the cards. It's nice. Okay, this is your what. Still stuck in spreadsheet. Oh, I like the tone, by the way. It's very good. Ends the chaos with one intelligent platform. I like this. Scattered systems. Okay, very good. Adapts your, not the other way around. So this is your how from what I'm getting it. It's how you're doing stuff differently. I would put this before the what. That's the only thing I have up until now to tell you. Otherwise, everything is good. Unico, native intent. Yep. This is also your how because you're different. So I would put these hows between the why and the what. You start with your why here at the beginning, and that's good. Just that's what I would do it because that's the way we talk to the old brain and we inspire people to buy because they believe in the mission.
Yeah,
and
you
it's
would
not me
follow
saying
this how, why, how, and what terminology.
Exactly.
To the letter.
Fast security. Okay, this is still what request them. Okay, this is very nice. I like this. I have nothing to tell you up until now. This doesn't happen.
So for the audience, I won, right?
Almost. Let me see the whole thing.
Okay.
But yeah, okay, this looks good. Okay, fine. I want to see something about the picture, but it's just a stock picture, so there's nothing. The only thing I would do, I would put you above us here, so I'll make it more easy, or make it easier for people to read about your story. But I'm glad that it's here, built and chaos. Right. Okay. Why we? Beautiful. Okay. Wow. What? Put this so people see it. I like the photos. Just something, make sure you have the same style of photos. That's the only thing I tell you here also.
Yeah, I
So
had one
that,
in Credito that told me the same thing over and over again. But when we get
yeah,
someone in marketing, we will retake over.
right. Okay, perfect. Wonderful. Okay, well, let me see some insights. The blog, uh, blogs is okay. It's just a blog. And the industries, or this is who you're targeting, I believe.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's pretty intuitive, so that's a good start. Yeah, it's pretty good. Okay, then. Well, would you like to hear my verdict? Because that's how we normally end these things.
So there is a verdict. I'm
There
happy
is
to
a
hear that.
verdict.
What is it?
Okay, so for me, a passing grade is 7. Because you had to reword some stuff there and change it, I'd give you a 6.8, which is the highest grade we've ever had on this podcast. Congratulations, Matthias.
I'm very sad we didn't win, but I'll take the almost.
You did better than most, but let's just put it like that. This is the highest grade we've had on the podcast. Congratulations. You have your
Thanks,
Y
Michael.
there, everything's there. Just change the order a little bit and you're perfect. Wow.
I'm
Okay.
happy to hear that. I will put that to someone who can code a website. Hopefully, we can get that sorted.
Of course. And this, guys, marks the end of our episode today on Intentionally FinTech. I've been your host today, Michael Phillips, joined by Mathias Kobberup from Uniconomic. Do you have any final words for our audience, Matthias, before we wrap up?
Be poor and execute. I think that
That's a
wraps it up.
unique advice. But yes, thank you so much, Matthias, for joining me today. And guys, make sure you tune into the other episodes of Intentionally FinTech, see other missions, visions, values of the other fintechs that we have featured, see their backstory, and also see if they passed or not the celery test. Up until then, I've been Michael Phillips. Thank you for joining me today, and have a good one.